Hey guys, so this is the Flywoo CineRacer20. This is another CineWhoop type quad, and if you've been following my channel in the past, you will be aware of the fact that I have tried a lot of CineWhoops and didn't like most of them. Didn't really like how they fly, didn't like how they handle, especially the flight times, which are very short, were bothering me. But you will also maybe have noticed that my reviews got more and more positive because these CineWhoop type quads get better and better, if we're honest. So the last one I tried, the HGRC Sector, was actually very, very decent and fun to fly and had absolutely usable flight times. And what I have here, the CineRacer20, is Flywoo's latest development in CineWhoops. So this is a smaller platform here. This is 2-inch, and I'm really curious to see how this thing will perform because Flywoo is a company I really quite like their products. They're very innovative and do have some are capable to push out some really well-performing products. So really looking forward to trying this thing out. But first, let's take a closer look at how this thing is set up and at a few other Flywoo products, which I want to mention in this video because there is some interesting stuff apart from the CineRacer20 coming from Flywoo. So one of those smaller product releases I want to show you, because this is very interesting for people that are into long range, is this new Flywoo. I think I'll have to zoom in because this thing is small. It's this new GPS here, the M8 Mini what's that? GM8, whatever, Mini. Well, it's a small Flywoo GPS, Goku branded, and it looks like a regular BN180. Nothing too special. You might wonder what the fuss is about. Well, the interesting thing is that this thing does have a compass. So, with compass here. And the big deal about this is that if you're running iNav on your quads, you need a compass for it to function properly. And well, the BN180 doesn't have a compass. So this is basically a small GPS unit with a compass. And this is very interesting for people that will be running iNav on small platforms, small quads, like a 4-inch, for example, or even smaller. So if you're into iNav builds, take a look at this GPS, because with the compass, this will make your build much easier and you won't have to have a separate compass or a bigger GPS in there. So another product which I won't be able to fully review in this video, because it does have an Express LRS receiver here, which is very interesting. As you can see, this is the antenna here. This tiny piece of plastic here is a ceramic antenna, actually. Let me grab something to point at it properly. So this is an Express LRS receiver, which is tiny. It's smaller than a Crossfire Nano, and this is the antenna, so that is really cool. The only problem is I'm running the 900 megahertz ELRS system. This is a 2.4 gigahertz, so I need to wait for a new module to actually fly this thing. But well, it does look really good. This is a 1S board here, which very nicely fits this frame with the cutouts here. It does have some small 1S motors. I suspect these are 08, 02.4. Interesting size. Well, this could be a very, very fun little indoor and outdoor flyer here on 1S. I really liked how simple the setup is. So this is just a single piece of TPU, basically holding this entire thing together here. The USB is nicely integrated in it. So I really like this overall setup for its simplicity and lightweight. I think it's around 19 grams, but this is going to be a feature video. I just wanted to quickly introduce it here. Okay, now back to the main product here I want to review. So the CineRacer20. Anything special about it? Well, I would say yes, 2 things, or maybe 3. So first of all, this is all injection molded. So this is not super common. I mean, obviously a part of the Insta360 Go mount here. These are all injection molded parts. So this is no 3D printing. I mean, other manufacturers, including Eachine, have done this before, but just be aware that this is real injection molded plastic here you're getting on most of these parts, the front here also. So this is a step forward. I always like to see on FPV products that are moving away from doing everything with 3D prints. 3D prints will always have their place, basically, in these types of build, because the quantities that we produce in this industry aren't huge, but 3D prints are usually, for structural parts like this, are not as robust as injection molded ABS, which we see here. So nice to see injection molding. Second thing is that these ducts here, now these are actual ducts. Not all CineWhoops have real ducts with an aerodynamic function. Often it's basically just sort of a bumper. These things here are optimized aerodynamically, so these are supposed to increase efficiency and reduce noises. So this is a real, let's say this is an actual duct design, at least Flywoo claims so, but other reviewers have already reported this thing is quite efficient and less noisy. So real actual duct design. And the third interesting thing is, I would say, is how compact this DJI build here is and how simple. So I guess I'll just take it apart now so we can look at it, but you can already see how nicely, I mean, this is all super tight. Look at how the Vista fits in here. The board here is underneath. So here's the USB. So everything is like super compact and tiny, and it's not easy to integrate these DJI units, these Vista units into a build. Now, obviously you can see one disadvantage is that the USB isn't accessible, but honestly, I usually just need to access this once to activate the unit, and then I'm done. So not a big deal for me. And this thing is actually quite easy to tear apart. So let's just do it, because this thing is basically just held by two standoffs, as you can see. These are spare ducts. These are just, I think this is, these are identical. These are actually identical, or are they mirrored? I think this is, let me just check here. I have to think. No, these are identical parts. So clever design, fully identical injection molded parts, but they still interlock into each other like this. And then basically you just have a standoff in between the plastic parts, which are here, and this is holding this entire thing. It's 4 screws basically. So let me take it apart. Let's have a look inside. All right, so I removed the 4 screws, and I think now we can just pull the duct off. Yeah, easy. So I'm trying not to have this whole thing fall apart, but still have a look inside. So this is how it looks inside. This is, as far as I know, is a Bluetooth module here that we're seeing here. So you can access the flight controller through Bluetooth. The air unit, and this is quite interesting. It's not an air unit, sorry, it's a Vista, obviously, is mounted on these TPU parts here. As well as, no, the board is actually mounted on M2 screws here, classically, but these TPU parts here seem to be the mount of the Vista. So this is how Flywoo achieved this tight build. It seems like the Vista is not actually mounted with screws, it's just sort of locked in place by TPU parts. Quite interesting. Also here in the rear, a quite elegant solution. So this is also interlocking with these standoffs here and the screws, the part that holds the antenna and the receiver. So I think this is, for such a tight, and this thing is an extremely tight build, Flywoo has done a great job actually of building this overall structure here. Only very small carbon parts, as you can see. So I think this is I really like how they did this here. This is quite an elegant solution overall, and probably also saves some weight to only have 2 standoffs basically holding this thing together. Now I have to be a bit careful. If you disassemble it, this thing basically falls apart. But for me, this seems absolutely fine. So let's put it back together. Okay, so here it is back together, and I have to admit it took like 10 minutes to put it back together because it's actually a bit challenging with these screws, because there's so many parts stacked on top of each other, and this is all falling apart in your hands while you're trying to reassemble it. That actually fully assembling it and disassembling it is a bit annoying, but no big deal breaker here for me. it's still fine. And you're not going to disassemble this very often because the USB is nicely accessible here in the rear. Basically, honestly, by the way, one small thing, I broke one of these injection molded plastic parts here while disassembling it. I don't know if I wasn't careful or if this was slightly cracked already. Tried to put it back together by heating it up, but it didn't really work. So it seems mine was slightly cracked here, but I don't think this is a huge issue in production. Seems I just got a bad one. This one cracked here. But yeah, the USB is nicely accessible, so assembling and disassembling will not be a huge problem. So what else is important about this quad here and the equipment that is on board? So obviously this is the DJI version, as you've already seen. The camera here is the Caddx Polar Nano, so really looking forward to how this will perform, because I mean, so far all the nano cameras for DJI were pretty bad, and it was basically not much better than flying analog. So I'm looking forward to try this one because I haven't tried it before. Then regarding the motors here, so these are the usual, I would say, Flywoo motors, the shiny chrome finish, which I kind of like. These are 1303 if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. 1203 actually. These are 1203s. This is an interesting size. 3100 kV. So 1203, 3100 kV. These are rather small motors, but let's see how they perform. And obviously this is a 4S, so it will be running on these 4S batteries that were included in the box here. I don't think this will be included if you buy it in the online shop, but in my review sample here, this was included. And quite interesting because Flywoo claims they sort of solved the flight time problem that all these CineWhoops had by using this 900 milliamp hour ADC battery here. It's an HV battery, and it's remarkably small for a 900 milliamp hours. So apparently this does over 12 minutes on this battery, and I guess this one is what you're usually going to use to fly your 2 or 3 minutes. But I mean, this is also pretty interesting for the Flywoo Explorer or micro long range class. So let me quickly grab my scale and see what this weighs, because it seems quite light and small for a 900. Okay, so the Flywoo 900 milliamp hour 4S, 91.6 grams. Now let's compare with an 850. Oh, yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, this is an 850 R line, which is less capacity, but it's 11 grams heavier than the 900. Now, obviously, different C rating. This is a 95C. This is supposed to be, what is this? ATC, and it's also officially HV. I mean, you can charge pretty much all LiPos to HV. So I think this is, 4.35 volts. But I mean, it's not very good for the pack usually. So quite interesting. So I suppose that this is actually a smaller pack with a lower C rating, which usually makes the pack lighter. And then you just get these 900 milliamp hours by HV charging it. But this pack basically is pretty interesting for, I mean, especially for me, for the Flywoo Explorer long range class types of quad, because saving 10 grams is actually a pretty big deal on those. Because you're trying to be sub 250, which is a bit of a headache often. Speaking of sub 250, is this thing still sub 250 with the big battery? And then, easily, you can already tell. So big battery in stuff is 60 go. Yeah, and it's still sub 250. I mean, that's pretty cool. If this thing really flies 12 minutes on this pack with the Insta on board, I will be very impressed. So let's take it outside and let's see if it actually delivers and flies for over 10 minutes and has the sort of flight characteristics that Flywoo promises and is capable of actually flying both cinematic and sort of more aggressive and racing. So this is some Insta360 Go footage. Obviously, this is a bit stabilized, but I mean, the quad really flies quite smoothly, and I'll also show you some goggle DVR in a second. But I have to say, very nice performance. This thing handles very, very nicely. I would say maybe one of my favorite CineWhoops so far. Although, I mean, it's not a revolution or total revelation. This thing isn't all that different from other CineWhoops, but it sort of feels a little bit more at home for me. I never really felt comfortable flying CineWhoops because to me they always handled awkwardly. I had a hard time predicting where these things are going and what they are doing. It was weird. Also because obviously, I lack experience with them. I never fly them for fun. I fly them only for reviews. So I'm really not a good CineWhoop pilot, but I never really, enjoyed flying them. But this one is a bit better. I really quite enjoyed hovering this around the trees, especially in proximity. I felt more at home with this quad. What I didn't do with it and what I don't think this thing is actually made for is really racing. I don't know why these are supposed to be made for racing. I don't think they are any good at racing, but for proximity flying, cinematic flying, this performs very, very nicely. And I really enjoyed flying it around. It's very stable. And as you can see, no jello in the Insta360 Go 2 footage, which is a rare thing because this camera is very prone to getting jello in the footage. But for some reason, there seems to be very little vibration in this quad, and you get very, very nice and clean HD footage. So let's switch over to the goggle DVR. So as you can see, the performance of this Polar Nano camera isn't quite on par with the micro-sized cameras, but it is, in my opinion, the best nano-sized DJI camera out there. I mean, the ones that existed so far were barely better than analog, in my opinion, but this one really does an okay job. It feels slightly lower resolution. I actually haven't checked the specs whether it really is lower resolution, but to me it feels lower resolution compared to the micro-sized cameras, specifically the Nebula Pro. But I mean, still the colors are okay, and as you can see, it's still absolutely feasible to navigate this thing around these small branches and so on. So to me, this was an absolutely decent performance. You can see the colors aren't totally off. The sky here in the footage is still blue. The grass is somewhat green. So yeah, I think if you need to go for a nano-sized camera on DJI, this is the best one, and this absolutely does a decent job, and it doesn't totally ruin the glorious HD footage that you would otherwise get. Alright, so what's the conclusion? Well, I have to say this thing performs quite nicely, and I think if you're looking for something to fly in your backyard that can bump into stuff, or for a bit of cinematic footage, this is a really, I would say, well-engineered, quite mature quad that seems to work well. No vibrations, nice handling, and you can finally get some actually useful flight times with a CineWhoop, because, I mean, for me, flying for only 2 minutes on a pack is just annoying, especially if you're just flying for fun. So 7 minutes on the 900 milliamp hour, absolutely decent. So I think this is maybe a nice winter quad for people, if you're in a region where we have winter, to just fly this in your backyard, or fly this in proximity through the forest, especially with the DJI system. I think this is something really you could absolutely enjoy. I don't know if it's a tool really for professionals for taking videos, because it can only carry a naked-sized cam or Insta360 Go. But I mean, still, for having fun and for flying in, especially indoors in proximity, this thing is very, very nice. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.